DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Against the Boards. I'm your host, Chamberlain Bauder, here for another episode this week, talking mostly about lax in upstate and western New York, and we'll get into hockey as we get more into the September months. Once we hit mid-September, all that lacrosse will kind of be over for a nice month. We can really dive into the hockey a bit more, but right now, still plenty of lacrosse to talk about. Big thanks to my producer, Paul Russo, for getting us rolling. And as we get into it, first, we will take a moment to talk about this U20 Worlds tournament that just happened over the last couple of weeks. Of course, friend of the program, Thomas Gravino, was playing in that tournament for the U20 USA team, playing two-way midfield as a defensive midfielder. That's the beauty of being a guy who in high school was an O-midi, now converts to D-midi. He ended up scoring a couple times, I believe, in the tournament. One of the shots they got on Instagram, unfortunately, they decided to pan the camera away as he shot the ball, trying to catch the goal, and they didn't catch either the ball hitting the back of the net or the shot. So I was vaguely disappointed in that shot as a videographer of lacrosse myself. But nonetheless, in the final, after dominating every opponent that they had, both teams, Canada and the United States, the Canadians came out on top with a 6-5 win. And of course, with that, big shout out to Dan Carey, who's one of the coaches for the U20 Canadian team. And it's how he often ends up working with a lot of the draft prospects that the Knighthawks have drafted over the last couple of years. And winning that gold medal with the U20 team. But that wasn't the only thing Dan Carey was doing over the last 2 weeks. That man was busy. Right after we ended our show last week, I was driving to Rochester, and I literally screamed at the top of my lungs in my car when I saw that the Knighthawks were trading for Zed Williams, and they did not have to get rid of a single player to do it. Now, then this week, yesterday, it was announced that Zed Williams would be franchise tagged by the Rochester Knighthawks. Now let's talk about this a little bit. So, upon the trade, Zed Williams was not under contract for next season for any team. He was a unrestricted free agent. Then the trade goes down. Everyone on the internet decides to say, how could you give up a 10th round pick for a guy that wasn't even under contract? And there's still other things in the mind when I think about this trade that we'll talk about in just a second. But how do you trade a 10th overall pick for a guy that's not under contract next year? Was the ask from a lot of people on the internet. First of all, Dan Carey's not going to trade away a 10th overall pick for a guy that's not going to play on his team. Secondly, it's the Seneca Nation that just bought the Rochester Knighthawks. Zed Williams is from Irving, New York. I don't think that there was going to be a problem with contract agreements for him when all was said and done and we got to this final point. But for at least this season, he'll be under the franchise tag. And of course, right now, seemingly recovering from injury over the course of last season and through the summer, was supposed to be with the Water Dogs. We'll get to that later. That attack doesn't need any help right now, so no surprise he wasn't playing for them this summer. But a big name in pro lacrosse, period. Fans of Western New York sports will remember Zed Williams from trying out for the Buffalo Bills 2 years ago during their early offseason rookie camp, minicamp tryouts as an undrafted player. Did not make the team, but did get to suit up with the Bills throughout that period of time as one of the local guys, along with Joe Andreessen, I think at the time actually was one of the other players being that did make the team, of course, in that setting. But Zed coming to the team as a righty is going to be very interesting to see. Firstly, it puts me in the mindset that this team is going to go strong right a lot of times for the Knighthawks. When you already have Ryan Smith and Ryan Lanchberry and Kyle Waters and Curtis Knight, that's the 4 righties that all play there. And then you have Austin Hazen on the practice squad, who's been playing in Peterborough in the MSL over the summer and is seemingly getting better every single time he touches the floor. But ultimately, when you look to it, Zed is easily the 3rd righty on that. Out of 6 there, he's easily the 3rd after you have a young Ryan in Smith and Lanchberry. And the other thing, too, is Zed's not necessarily the quarterback of the offense. He's not the guy who you put the ball in his stick and say, go run it. He's the guy that you put off on the righty side down low and you say, all right, we're going to zing this to you, take it fully loaded, or use your body weight to get down to the crease and create an opportunity for yourself. So with that, we then hop over to the lefty side where... So obviously with that righty side, someone has to go, right? Between Curtis Knight and Kyle Waters, someone's going to not be getting very much playing time, ultimately. On the lefty side, though, if they're going strong right, that means Graydon Hogg gets a lot less minutes. Turner Evans gets a lot less minutes because you're going to walk out there and go, how do we not put Connor Fields as the lefty shooter and Thomas McConvey as the down low bumper lefty that can also take it up top and score from the outside. That 5, the Knighthawks power play of likely what would be Ryan Lanchberry at the top, Ryan Smith on the righty wing, or Zed Williams on the righty wing, and Ryan Smith down low, Connor Fields on the lefty shooter spot, and then Thomas McConvey down low. It was a terrifying offense this year. It will be more scary next year. And they bring in that championship mentality, which is 100% the aspect on the offensive end that was missing from this group. The experience of recently having won that championship post-COVID and knowing how to get there. They had constantly been trying to put players like that on the defensive end of things. Now they've finally done it on the offensive end. Unfortunately for some Knighthawks fans, that means that a couple guys will lose minutes and things will have to change around that offense. But there's no doubt that it got significantly better, even just with his locker room presence that he can bring to this group. And I think that sums it up for our conversation there about Zed Williams. I am super, super excited for how this whole Knighthawks squad is going to unfold as time goes on and we get into the season. But really right now, like that offensively is not something that I thought they needed to make a change to get better. But that's one of those championship moves, right? It's the thing that fans and people who follow the team weren't thinking about that will clearly benefit the team, but it's not necessarily what you need for that little next step. This is a team that's moving towards a championship, and this is a move that shows that. Now, something that will be coming up in the next 2 weeks is, of course, with that, where that pick goes, the NLL Draft. The Rochester Knighthawks have completely moved themselves out of the first round now. That is a key factor to take into account. Not a single first-round pick for the Rochester Knighthawks. Their first pick now is at 24. So they swapped 28 and 24 with Colorado, gave the Mammoth that 10th overall pick, and took Zed Williams. Now, most of the mocks that I've seen around the 10 spot see someone like an Owen Hiltz going there. Now, I won't lie. I think Owen Hiltz has probably showed through this summer that he might warrant a little bit higher than 10th in that draft. And someone like a Georgia doesn't really look like they're going for a lefty, but someone like a Halifax at 5 might like an heir apparent to anybody on their lefty side, really, at this point in time. So ultimately, I think at that 10 spot, the value that the Knighthawks are getting, even if Zed Williams only plays 2 more seasons in the NLL, the value that they get at that 10 spot for that trade is far above what they would have gotten in a player at that 10th spot based on what is around right now in this draft and what they can get later on in this draft, depending on where they pick and what they feel that they need to add to this group. And with that, we'll just quickly reference the Knighthawks, who often Dan Carey is one of the most active general managers during a draft, only have one pick in each round of the draft aside from the first round. So it'll be interesting to see if some of those get packaged as the day goes on. He maybe moves up into the third round because there are some guys that he likes and that he wants to pick up. But could also be one of those drafts where he just sticks and picks, and maybe there's some UCBLL guys that he wants that could fall to the team. And speaking of those UCBLL guys, we'll get into them just real quickly here, give you a run down the line of, if you pay attention to the draft on September 6th to the later rounds, what names might you have heard me say before, or have you heard just in general, being an upstate New Yorker that watches and pays attention to lacrosse. Really, there's a long list. It starts out, Sam Bennett is a Canandaigua native and played for the Hawkeyes and the Armory in the Upstate Collegiate Box Lacrosse League. Just played for the Hawkeyes in the NCBS tournament that I called 2-3 weeks ago now. Geez, math is getting a little. It's almost the end of August, and it feels like it just started like a week ago at this point. But first one there is, of course, Sam Bennett. There's a couple guys. Ian Kane, a transition player for the Hawkeyes as well. Connor Murphy, a up-and-coming, or he's an attackman for St. Bonaventure, but he plays transition for the Buffaloes in the Upstate Collegiate Box Lacrosse League, and he just made the finals with the Buffaloes in the National Collegiate Box Series in early August. Plays more of an Ian McKay role, though, for that team, having been coached by Ian McKay. I'm excited to see where he goes. I think he's one of the first names that I will truly perk up to you as fans. You should keep an ear out for where Connor Murphy goes. I hope for his sake that he doesn't just go to Buffalo, honestly, because he might get playing time, but it won't be for a couple years, and he'll just become one of the group there. I think he could really become an Owen Grant type transition player if he goes to a team that doesn't have a player like that right now. The way that when Grant got traded to Vancouver, he was the guy in transition for them. I think Connor Murphy has a chance in the next 2 years to be the guy for somebody in transition, and he has a field Division I attackman's shot on him, which is just terrifying to think about. Two other big names that I want to get to, and there's still a couple of other ones that we'll reference as well. Clifford Gaston is an Ontario native, but played all of his college ball at RIT and stayed in the summers in upstate New York, along with minimal summer Canadian box experience, played a lot of it in the UCBLL, and he is one of the most fluid lacrosse players that I've ever seen. It'll be interesting to see how his game interprets to the NLL, being 5'9" and 165 pounds, but definitely we know that the floor is open for those types of players as long as they can be slippery enough, and no doubt that Gaston is slippery enough. If he can hone his skills in, he could be a dangerous player for any team on that righty side as a forward. The last big name that we got to talk about is, of course, the one who was on the show last week, and that's Zach Terry. Now, Zach has over 200 goals in the Upstate Collegiate Box Lacrosse League, 2 times led Division II lacrosse in goals scored per game, with over 4 goals per game on an average. But what he's done in his time playing box lacrosse is add on to the little things. I talked about it last week. He kind of plays a little bit like a left-handed Kyle Buchanan, maybe similar to a Larson Sundown, in that setting the picks, causing turnovers, getting loose balls has become more important a part of his game than that shot. But he'll still let them fly when he's on a team where he is the premier lefty. But he understands that's not going to be his job in the NLL. I'm excited to see where he could end up going. All of these 3 guys, though, this is the interesting thing with the NLL draft. They could go in the 6th round. They could go in the 3rd round. They could go in the 4th. Either way, anybody on a team that gets drafted between the 2nd and 6th round of the NLL draft is going to have the same exact opportunity to make that team. And ultimately, they will be seen as such when they get into that room, especially if you think about a team like the Knighthawks. If they stick and pick in each round, then they're just the next pick back as you go from third round to fourth round to fifth round to sixth round. So ultimately, they're going to get that opportunity. So those are the three names, big names, that I am excited out of upstate New York to see in this draft. Another couple of names to reference, Nate Senez, who played for the Hawkeyes for 3 seasons, played at Limestone and played his last year at RIT. And those are really the major references for upstate New York players. Titus Chapman also is a native of the DMV area in the Carolinas, but played his summer ball with the Hawkeyes as well. A couple of bigger names, though, when it comes to PLL names that most lacrosse fans will know based on eligibility for this draft as it comes up. CJ Kirst is the inevitable first overall pick of this draft. Jamie Dowick is the owner and general manager of the Toronto Rock, has already come out and said that within those first 3 picks, CJ Kirst is getting taken, and that there's no conversation to trade that first overall pick. There might be for second and 3, but not for the first, because it is going to be CJ. And anybody that watched the Toronto Rock last year knows that the one thing that offense needs is a lefty attackman. Or forward. And so there's big name number 1. Big name number 2 is, of course, someone we're going to talk about in a minute. Chris Kavanaugh plays for the Redwoods in the PLL right now, is tied for 4th in the league in points with 37. He's going to be disgusting for whatever team he plays for as a righty. Owen Hiltz, a lefty out of Syracuse, is also going to be a key player. Of course, a Canadian box is where he really made his bread and butter, so getting back into that setting is going to make a lot of sense for him. And he's definitely going to be one of those premier players. I think this summer has done a lot for his stock, or it should have done a lot for his stock. The only thing that's going to hold him back from going high in this draft is how many more teams feel that they need premier transition players and premier defenders. The last name when it comes to, 2 names actually, Hugh Kelleher and Mick Kelly, 3 names as I'm saying it. Hugh Kelleher and Mick Kelly, both midfielders that are playing this year in the PLL. Mick Kelly played for the PLL Cannons on a line with Ryan Drenner and Matt Campbell, and Hugh Kelleher is the Wonton, New York native and Cornell grad that has been playing for the New York Atlas, just won a national championship. Of course, he is also eligible. But the last notable name to bring up here that will likely go early is Levi Virch, a defender who's also a Canadian-born player. Any of these just kind of puts into preference the sentence that I'm about to say. Anytime that you see a Canadian playing in the PLL, they should probably be a top 10 pick in the NLL draft. And that doesn't necessarily speak to, the skill of the PLL is so high. I mean, these guys are the best players in the PLL, some of them. When you're a rookie, you're usually one of the better players in the league. There's a drop-off after about year 3. But those guys are going to go early. I mean, Michael Grace was a 3rd-round pick by the Atlas in the PLL draft this year. He was the 2nd overall pick in the NLL draft last year. So definitely those are probably the names of note. Kirst, Virch, Kavanaugh, and then Hiltz are really the 4 PLL names that will be key to have in mind if you're a lacrosse fan with this draft. That draft will be at 1 p.m. on September 6th. I said it without conviction last time. It is a remote draft. They're doing it from their league studios in Toronto. It will not have an in-person gathering. I believe that even the league representatives will be from their own home offices to do so. And everything after the first round on NLL Plus will be posted to social media as draft picks go. Honestly makes a lot of sense for the NLL, just the way that the draft has been over the last couple of years. I've been to it each of the last 3 years. And it makes sense that it's not an in-person thing. Although it was nice to get a bunch of extra interviews for different things while you were there. But that does it for our NLL draft conversation. Drug that one on for a little bit. But now we get into the PLL as this upcoming Monday after this weekend on the Labor Day slate, it will be the PLL semifinals. On the West, it is the Denver Outlaws and the California Redwoods. And on the East, the New York Atlas and the Philadelphia Water Dogs. Now, as we look to the Denver Outlaws versus the California Redwoods, also known as the boys from Victor and Fairport versus the Rochester Rattlers, T.D. Erlin and Chase Erlin and Jared Connors all on that California Redwoods team, taking on, of course, Tim Sudan and Mike Manley, as well as, I mean, really, that might be it at this point now when it comes to true Rattlers on that team. But Logan McNaney in goal, a Corning alum or Corning native, adding to that unit of the known upstate New York guys. And of course, everyone knows that Denver Outlaws team has 4 Tourton winners on their offensive side with Pat Cavanaugh, Logan Wisnauskas, Jared Bernhardt, and Brennan O'Neill. So, as we look to the bracket that I made last week quickly, only already broken technically, but not really because I didn't have Carolina or California beating Denver. I had Carolina, though, being the one to get to that game. But when Blaze only makes 10 saves, first, you lose money, and second, you end up losing your mark on that leg of the bracket. But I do have to say, I feel pretty good about my Water Dogs pick, and we'll get into that in just a second. But first, let's talk about the Redwoods and the Outlaws a little bit more. Chase Erlin really put on one of his best performances of the year for the Redwoods in that game against Carolina, and he's going to have to do exactly the same thing if they have any chance of making it to the finals against this Denver team. He is going to get the light shot out on him unless Denver, which this could truly happen, shoots themselves in the foot with the fact that they haven't played a game in a month. And of course, it won't be them shooting themselves in the foot. It will technically be the league shooting them in the foot. Because the way that this bye period has gone is just outrageous. They got the last week of the season off, then you took a full league bye week, and then they got a bye. And this goes back to my thing with college, and the way that, Oregon in football got absolutely blown off their block by Ohio State because they hadn't played in a month, and Ohio State had been playing every week. Like, why are we adding a league-wide bye week when we're awarding bye weeks to the winning teams? Like, that just seems stupid. Also, the conversation has always been to avoid the NFL season. And here we are forcing ourselves 2 weeks extra into it because we're taking an extra bye week for the championship, and then we're also taking an extra bye week to get to the playoffs. Just seems a little counterintuitive, honestly. But Redwoods and Denver is going to be, of course, the story that you'll get forced down your throat. The Cavanaughs competing against one another. The two players tied for 4th place in the PLL in points. But some other players that you should not be forgetting about when we get into this game. And the first two are the goalies on either side of the field. Because one, they're both from upstate New York. Corning versus Victor. Awesome. I love that. Section 4 versus Section 5. Big time. I mean, it's not a rivalry, but it's one that, when you look to some of the best teams in Section 5, the best teams in Section 4, those are the juggernauts, right, for their areas. Also, though, quick note, of course, Dylan Malloy leads the entire league in goals to this point in the season, and Chris Cavanaugh is actually tied second with 23. Their offense is lethal, but they're going to face Logan McNaney, who's already, while only having played less than the full season of this year, one of the top 5 goalies. There's only 8 goalies that start in the PLL. One of the top 4 goalies in the PLL based on performance this season. But that game, no doubt, will be an exciting one to watch. On the other side of the bracket, it's an even more exciting game in my mind. Absolutely no doubt about it. The noon game that will be not syndicated, only on ESPN Plus, is number 1 New York taking on number 3 Philadelphia. Now, let's talk about this Water Dog squad real quick, because I'm not going to lie. I think the start of the snowball wrecking ball did exactly what it needed to do in that game. Now, I did say it would be on the backs of Dylan Ward in goal, but instead they rode on the backs of Matt DeLuca in that one, and it still ended up working out. We look at that 14-12 final. The stat breakdown of this game is just simply outrageous, and we won't take too much time on this because really there aren't that many New York players that we're talking about when it comes to this, other than CJ Kirst having been a Cornell alum. But ultimately, it is key because a guy like Thomas McConvey loses out right now based on how this game went stats-wise, but is the next step to their snowball reaction. So, the Water Dogs had goals scored by 3 players in this game. Michael Sowers, Kieran McArdle, and CJ Kirst, their 3 starting attackmen, were the only players to score goals in the entire game. And only 3 other players on the team had points, and only one of them plays offense. Jack Hanna had 1 assist. Ben Ware had 1 assist. Dylan Hess had 1 assist. That means that a team with Zach Currier, Thomas McConvey, Jack Hanna, and Connor Kelly as their 4 offensive middies, and Mikey Schlosser, we'll lump him in because he gets playing time over Jake Taylor right now. 1 point between those 5 midfielders. That's like a genuine negative. Like, Bill Tierney can walk into practice this week and be mad at his team for not doing something despite the fact that they won. And ultimately, those 3 attackmen played in such dominant fashion that it doesn't even look like we're in a 2-goal game. But even if each of those midfielders gets 1 point next time out, 1, you're taking load off of your attackmen, but 2, if they keep putting up the same numbers, now you're talking about 16 goals instead of 14, or 18 goals instead of 14, or 20. And ultimately, the way that the Atlas and the Water Dogs played in the last game of the regular season, they're probably going to need 20. These 2 teams are going to beat the living crap out of each other. And it is going to be very, very exciting. And the line from the PLL right now is, which attack line would you want? And an interesting line in my mind, to be sure, because if you were to look just at regular season statistics, it would probably feel pretty obvious which attack line between the Atlas and the Water Dogs you would want. The Atlas have the number 1 leading scorer in the PLL, the number 3 leading scorer in the PLL, and meanwhile, the Water Dogs have number 2, and that is pretty much it. Kieran McArdle is not on any of the goal scoring tallies. He, of course, ranks all-time now over 500 goals, but Connor Schellenberger and Jeff Teeter both tied second in assists right now in the league. Meanwhile, Connor Schellenberger is also tied second in the league in goals. You've got the perennial likely MVP, the defending MVP. Oh, and then don't forget about the guy who can catch literally anything from either of them on the inside. That is what Xander Dixon's entire job is. And then to finish it at whatever weird contorted angle his body is at that point in time. The Slim Reaper, as they call him. Now, for the Water Dogs, you've got CJ Kirst, Kieran McArdle, Michael Sowers, that just put up the point output that they did last week, which was literally nothing short of remarkable. 19 points between 3 players. It's silly. It is literally funny to think about that. That is a stupid number of points. But if their midfield doesn't pick up, they're going to have to do it again. And now, I don't like to take stabs at players and different things like that, but when I watch a lot of lacrosse like I do, certain things really irk me while I'm watching games. And every time that the Water Dogs offense started to go stagnant, they tried to initiate it through Connor Kelly, the smallest midfielder that they have. You've got Zach Currier, who, I get it, he's not an offensive player. You're not going to start him. You have Thomas McConvey, who won midfielder of the year the last time he played in college lacrosse and is clearly one of the best offensive prospects in indoor right now. He's an initiator to the nth degree. That is what he does in field. You've got Jack Hanna, who also has all of that length and size and the shooting ability. Why is the ball being put in Connor Kelly's stick to try to initiate the Water Dogs offense? He's not drawing a pole. He's going to draw a short stick, and then clearly, as he showed through all of those games, didn't score. They got to change who's driving on their offense. They have to change who is driving from the midfield if they want to find a way past this Atlas team. If they do that, I think they cruise. It'll only be a 3-goal game, but I think they will cruise because this is a team that can come out to that 5-goal start just from their offense, from their attack. And then if they settle into it right, they can control it. I don't know why I'm riding this Water Dogs train so hard. I see it. I could be completely shut down because I've just tried to defend it too long now, though. So, I mean, really, everything's up in the air, right? But ultimately, those 2 games will be at noon and 3 on Monday next week this upcoming weekend on September 1st. So you'll have some games to watch on that Labor Day stretch. And then it will be the NLL Draft on September 6th, the next weekend on Saturday. And then a week following will be the PLL Championship coming up in Harrison, New Jersey. So that does it for us this week on Against the Boards. Of course, lots of random little lacrosse things to talk about as we have gone on. Big time news, though, this week truly is Zed Williams' franchise tag. So no more questions about what his contract looks like as he now becomes a Rochester Knighthawk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to my producer, Paul Russo. I've been Chamberlain Bauder. You're listening to Against the Boards.